Alright, welcome back to the channel, guys. So for today's video, I have the car cold soaked. It was in the mid-20s overnight and Fahrenheit, so a few degrees below 0 Celsius. And I got up this morning, I'm at 79% state of charge. I have not preheated the cabin. I did not add any charge to the battery this morning. I just got up, went out to the car, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the heat, turn it to 74 degrees Fahrenheit, turn the seat heat on, and I'm going to go ahead and see what kind of efficiency we get. I'm going to do everything wrong. The car is cold soaked. I did not pre-charge or preheat the battery. I'm going to turn the cabin heat on, again without preheating the cabin, and I'm going to go drive on the highway at 60 miles per hour. There aren't any faster speed limit roads than that around here without driving an hour away. So so I'll be driving fast, using the heat without preheating the car, cold soaked. So let's see what kind of poor efficiency we get and how bad we can make it. Oh, and just so you know, mid-20s is about typical winter weather for here in northern Illinois. So let's dig into it here. A big part of the reason I want to do this test is I've had a number of questions from viewers asking, okay, will you preheat the car and you pre-charge it before you leave to kind of give the battery some warmth? I can't do that. I just have to run out to my car and drive. What can I expect from it? And so, you know, honestly, I purposely don't drive my car in these conditions because I know my efficiency is going to be in the tank. But it's a valid question. So now for those of you Tesla fanboys out there that are going to get ticked at me and say, well, you're purposely trying to get bad range. The answer is absolutely yes. I'm purposely trying to get poor range. I want to see how bad it can really get. Now the weather can also be colder than this. So, you know, mid to high 20s Fahrenheit is typical winter weather for us, but it definitely could be, the weather could be worse. And so it is, you know, if it were even colder, if it were below 0, say, maybe 5 below 0, which does happen on occasion, these numbers could theoretically be even worse. But again, I'm doing everything in the worst way possible on this test, just to see how bad it really can be. There is a deer. So just to see how bad it can be. And so I'm curious, if you get in the car, it's cold, you have to use the cabin heat with the car unplugged, and you have to immediately hit the expressway, how poor range really is it going to be? So I've got the heat set, I've got the seat heat set, did not do anything to precondition the car. I'm just immediately driving it, and I'm going to go straight to the highway and drive fast. As a comparison, yesterday was pretty much the exact same temperature. It was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, again maybe 3 below Celsius. I drove 200 miles exactly. I think it was 200.2 miles, and I averaged 258 watt hours per mile through the day. Now what I did yesterday to maximize my range, I preheated the car before I went out to it, and I turned the charge rate up from, or the state of charge from 80% to 90% for an hour before I left. So the cabin was warm, the battery had just charged a bit, so it was internally conditioned. And the bulk of my day yesterday was averaging maybe 45 miles per hour. I did have some expressway driving yesterday, maybe 50 of those 200 miles were on the expressway, but that's what I did yesterday. So this morning's temperature is essentially the same as yesterday. Both days were dry. So I wanted to give this cold soaking experiment a try. Oh, also the first couple miles that you drive a car in the morning, you're going to get far worse watt hours per mile, far worse efficiency than once you've driven for a little bit. So like for instance, right now I'm at 600 watt hours per mile, but that's really a misnomer. That's not correct. It just dropped to 589. That will drop and gradually settle into a legitimate number. So I'm just curious to see what that legitimate number is. All right, I've traveled exactly 10 miles, 10.0 miles. Now I'm turning around and I'm going to drive back home the exact same route to eliminate elevation changes from the equation. So we'll see what we get out of it here. Also, I've been accelerating more briskly. I've basically been ignoring everything having to do with range at all and just getting hard on the throttle and again, cranking the heat. Oh, yesterday, I don't think I used the heat at all once I got in the car. I just turned the seat heat on 3 bacons to bake my butt and was bundled up all day in the car. And that was because I knew I had a lot of miles to drive. And yesterday, I started the day at 89% state of charge. I rolled in my driveway with 12% left and had driven 200, just a shade over 200. I think it was 200.4 or 200.2 miles. So, but again, it was roughly 260 watt hours per mile. And yes, it is legal to do a U-turn here. In case you're wondering, there's actually a green U-turn arrow that comes up there. Just for those of you that are going to attack me for doing a U-turn, totally legal there. All right, so back from my drive, I've driven 20.1 miles and averaged 393 watt hours per mile. All right, so you can see I drove 20.1 miles and used 8 kilowatt hours for an average of 393 watt hours per mile. And as I stated earlier, I got in the car with it cold soaked, been sitting all night, no battery preconditioning, no cabin preheating, nothing, and below freezing temperature, and just got in the car, turned the seat heat, turned on the cabin heat, started driving, went immediately to the highway. I was accelerating hard. I had almost no regen through this entire drive, so it was friction brakes, was accelerating hard, was driving about 65 on average on the highway, and did round trip the exact same trip going south as I did north, with the exception of the very end. I pulled into a different neighborhood here, but to cancel out elevation changes. So basically right around 400 watt hours per mile. Now I noticed that I was at 600 watt hours per mile or so for the first 4 or 5 miles. Then it really started to drop. And in fact, if I go into the energy graph here, over the last 15 miles, it's been 352 watt hours per mile. So the fact that I'm at 393 shows you that the first 5 miles were very high power consumption, and then it settled down. But basically, if you get in the car and it's cold soaked, it's below freezing, the car was sitting outside, which is another thing. My car sat outside, not in a garage, below freezing temperatures. You didn't precondition the battery, you didn't precondition the cabin, just got in the car and drove. The first 5 miles or so, you're probably going to get around 500 or 600 watt hours per mile, and then it's going to settle down. It's going to drop down to 350 watt hours per mile. And again, over a 20-mile distance, I averaged 393, basically 400 watt hours per mile. Now, if you do the math on that, if you were to maintain roughly 400 watt hours per mile over an entire charge, which you wouldn't, because again, the first few miles are high, you would settle back down to about 350 watt hours per mile. So this car is rated at 310 miles of range. This is a long-range rear-wheel drive car, which Tesla says is rated at 325, but they keep bouncing the software around in that. My car is 310 miles on a full charge right now at 62,000 miles, so whatever. But at a full charge, 310 miles of rated range would be, that's Tesla calculating, I think it's 215 to 225 watt hours per mile, something in that vicinity. So if you're getting 350 watt hours per mile over that charge duration driving in the cold weather, then that 310 miles would drop to probably in the 170, 175 mile range. And so I'm just being honest and straightforward with you guys about this. If you use the car below freezing temperatures in the worst possible conditions, in the worst possible driving manner, this is about what you can expect on a full charge. It would be maybe 175, 180 maybe watt hours or miles on a charge. So just something I want you to be aware of. But again, I go back to, this is a pretty rare scenario. Generally speaking, you're either going to be preconditioning the cabin or the battery or both before you leave. Also, you're generally not going to be on the highway the whole time. You're going to be doing some slower driving. So what I have found is not nursing it. Like yesterday, I was nursing it. I was driving a bit slower. I wasn't using the cabin heat. I preconditioned the cabin before I left. I preconditioned the battery before I left. I used the seat heat as my sole source of heat through the day. I was seeing about 260 watt hours per mile for a 200 mile distance, and it was 3/4 of my day was at about 45 miles per hour. 1/4 of my day was at 65 or 70 on the expressway. But if you're just, my assessment would be, if you're doing mixed driving and you're making some attempt to be efficient, I mean some attempt at all, even a little bit of effort, you're probably going to be at about 315, 320 watt hours per mile on a cold winter day without really paying much attention to the range, but just not giving it a worst case scenario. And that's going to give you around 200 miles of range on a full charge. Just, again, pretty much worst possible conditions, but doing your best to at least not try to waste energy. Today I was trying to waste energy. So that's my assessment of it. But again, 20 miles below freezing, 393 watt hours per mile is what I got. So curious what your thoughts are. I'm probably going to repeat this test again when it's very cold, maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be what, maybe 10 or 15 below Celsius, and we'll see what we get out of it at that point. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. My referral code will be a link in the description below, my email address, also an order link if you guys want to order an adjustable screen mount will also be in a link in the description below. So let me know your thoughts, and yeah, looking forward to this winter. I've got some cool videos that I want to shoot related to winter driving with EVs. So thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye now. Oh, yet another video I'm going to get attacked in the comments section for.